Welcome to The More Perfect Union, the podcast that offers real debate without the hate. I'm Rebecca Kushmiter, back from a couple of weeks of hiatus here at The More Perfect Union, and I am pleased to be joined by Greg Matuzak.
Hi, I did enjoy our time off. It gave me a chance to come up with excuses not to serve on any juries. So that was always nice. And as your common sense liberal from Cincinnati, Ohio, it's good to be here.
All right. And DJ McGuire.
The last time we were all together on the air, Ukraine had not received any aid. Ukraine has still not received any aid. I am considerably angrier than I was the last time we were together.
And you won't like DJ when he's angry. In fact, he's turning green. His shirt is shredding. Everybody watch out. And last, but most certainly not least, Kevin Kelton.
Hello. Well, yes, the last time we did talk about Ukraine funding, and DJ, we were on a thread a few days ago, and DJ said, well, by Tuesday, they'll probably have approved funding for Ukraine. Otherwise, I'm going to be very angry. And DJ, what did I say?
You said I'd be very angry.
I said, we're going to have a very angry DJ on Tuesday. And we sure do. I went to see the movie Civil War. And I know you guys have heard about it. I guess nobody else has seen it yet.
I saw Gone with the Wind in 8th grade. Does that count?
It does count. Yeah.
No.
So you know what it's about. It's obviously a modern day. America is in the midst of a civil war when the movie begins. And they made some very interesting choices. And I'm not going to, obviously no spoilers here. But first of all, it's an incredible action movie. If you see it for no other reason, the visuals and the action are stunning. They also made some interesting choices to try to take politics out of it by aligning California with Texas in the Civil War.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are talking about that choice.
Okay, without seeing it, does that take something away from it by... Yeah, like it seems like they were kind of like tiptoeing around the elephant in the room by saying like, okay, we're not going to put the red states versus the blue states, or we're not going to do the Dems versus the Republicans. So we'll just make this really generic and this will be the safest, nicest, we all get along Civil War. And it will be, like, hey,
entirely regional.
It won't, but we just don't want to offend anybody because let's not make this about like something crazy like slavery. But does that take away from the film? You've seen it, Kevin. I haven't. But I mean, at a certain point, you'd have to say like, come on.
Well, right? That's been discussed over and over again. That's one of the controversies about the film. I understand the choice that the filmmakers made. First of all, they're looking at trying to get, as large a box office as they can, and they didn't want to insult half the country by saying you guys are the bad guys. If we don't use American red and blue, but we find other dividing lines, then we have a larger pool of people who will respond positively to the film. I also think that the film wasn't about American politics per se, but rather about how American culture is taking us into a civil war.
But that actually concerns me some, because if memory serves, and apologies for the additional spoiler, one of the things that causes the cracks is the incumbent president attempts to serve a third term.
Correct.
Which obviously is a no-no. And I don't know. Obviously I haven't seen the film, so I don't know how that is portrayed. But from what I've seen of the discussion of the film and interviews with the director and everything, and it was trying to say, these cultures are driving us apart and all that kind of thing, it makes me leery, because it could be, and Kevin, please tell me if it doesn't, it could be a situation where it ends up, however unintentionally, sort of grooming the public for a president who would go for a third unconstitutional term, which is a big problem when we have somebody who probably would go for a third unconstitutional term if he ever got the chance?
I would say, having seen the film, and again, no spoilers, I don't think it grooms the public at all for that. But what I do think it does groom the public for is the idea of political violence being justified. We have talked on this podcast about the potential in this coming election cycle for violence based on, let's say, the militia groups or just the gun nuts or what have you. And if there's a problem with this movie, it's that people like the four of us would look at it and see it as a cautionary tale. But I think that there are millions and millions and millions of Americans who would see it and see it as an aha, yeah, maybe that ain't such a bad idea. Right. The action scenes alone justify your $10 for this. Yeah.
I actually like, my favorite films are really long, boring films. You'd be actually surprised, but I do like action films. You know me too well.
That's speaking true. Of long, boring films, we want people to know that MPU the movie is coming out next year.
With plenty of action sequences where all of our joints creak and we complain about these kids today. Speaking of complaining about things, Donald Trump this week became the first former president in American history to stand trial as a criminal defendant. And I'm interested to see if his desire to get this over with prevents some of the delay tactics that he usually would encourage his lawyers to employ at this time. Greg, what do you think? Do you think Trump is going to try and hustle these along, or do you think he's going to start dragging his heels?
We've seen recent polls, and I know we talk about polls and they don't mean anything, where Biden is now catching up, and we've seen him. And I think if we see more and more, then he may actually say enough is enough. Trump has to get back on the trail. I've got to get out of this courtroom because it's not a good look for him. And the judges don't like him for some reason. I don't know why. They just don't have that connection. And you might see him speed this up and try to get out before November. But right now, he's very reticent. He's always been reticent to ever do the common sense thing. He always does the Trump thing. So I'm going to say no. He's going to do when everyone says you should zig, he's going to say, I'm going to roll on the floor and, do my own thing.
Oh, Kevin, what do you think? Do you think Trump is going to get strategic about this and try and get out of the courtroom? Or do you think he's worried about what the verdict is going to ultimately be?
No, he's not going to get strategic, and he's not going anyplace. So all I know is, since the four of us started redoing this show, I think it was sometime in the middle of last year, I have been saying on the podcast, I said, people don't get that come January. I thought it was going to be in January. It started in April. This man is going to be in a courtroom 4 or 5 days a week. And people are going to see him not as a presidential candidate, but as a defendant sitting behind the defense table, silent and not in control of the situation. And that's indeed where we are. I think it's only going to last about 6 weeks. I don't know whether it'll be a conviction. I don't know whether it'll be a conviction on the felony counts, the misdemeanor counts, or it'll be a hung jury. I know it ain't going to be an acquittal. I don't think he's going to get acquitted.
Well, the hung jury is Trump's goal.
Yeah.
I think there is a 66-33 shot, the 33 being the shot that this happens, that Trump actually goes to jail for contempt.
Greg, what do you think?
Oh my gosh. One, DJ is probably right. He probably will, but that would be the greatest thing in the world for him. Fox News has already changed their narrative. If anyone listened to the Fox News podcast this morning, the podcast was entitled, Is Justice Blind When It Comes to Former President Trump? And pretty much the entire talking point for 35 minutes was Trump can't get a fair trial in New York. Everything's stacked against him. I mean, it's the same talking points he's been saying for a long time. If he actually goes to jail for a night or two, it's like they're putting him up on a cross for him to be martyred. This is the best scenario for his base.
Greg, have you and I ever disagreed before on this podcast? I don't think it's ever happened.
No. You've always been lockstep. People often call you Greg Jr. It's weird.
Well, Greg Jr. is stepping off the boat today. I see it.
It was time. It was time.
It had to happen someday.
Had to happen. I know.
I think if he spends a night or two in jail, that is a death knell on his presidency, or his hopes for another presidency, I should say. Boy, I think if people see him being walked out of court in handcuffs, and I know it's not going to be on cameras because there are no cameras in the courtroom, but just the idea, the image of him in jail overnight, and then him coming back in the next day and being and seething. Already this week, I have a feeling that some of the glow of Trump as the businessman, a man in control of his own destiny, a man who can upend the system, I think a lot of that mythology is being drained away from him. And the day that a judge says, Mr. Trump, I'm sorry, but you've gone too far, bailiffs, put him in handcuffs, remand him to the jail cell. I think that's the day that Joe Biden suddenly has like 48% approval and is up over 50% in the polls.
What you were saying about, Kevin, this venue kind of taking the shine off Trump, him behind the defendant's table and all that. It's also the fact that it's a grungy courthouse. Like, this isn't a sexy courthouse. This isn't like, some majestic brick building in a town square. This is just like a gray high rise in Manhattan. And you've seen the hallways. They're very linoleum. There's metal sliding doors. This is not a cool place for him to be delivering these speeches. And there are no flags behind him for him to hug. So it's not great. And it definitely looks institutional.
Yeah.
And I would say two things about Greg's comments. One, we don't know how many independent and swing voters Fox News actually reaches, let alone impacts.
Certainly not on a weekday morning.
Yeah, it could just be part of the epistemic closure that we are seeing on the right in general, where Fox News will rev up all the people who are going to vote for Donald Trump anyway, but just it's falling on deaf ears outside of Trump's base, number one. Number two, Manhattan has 85,000 Trump voters in it. Yes, Joe Biden carried Manhattan Island very heavily. That is true. But it's not like there are zero Trump voters in the state, in the county, anywhere at all. There are 85,000 of them. There's plenty of folks out there for whom Trump could find one or two sympathizers to land on the jury. Hell, America's worst sports guy Clay Travis is begging all Trump voters in Manhattan to sneak themselves on the jury to get the jury hung, which might actually be illegal, but we'll leave that aside.
It can't be done. It was sent to like 500 very specific people. You can't just show up and volunteer. Like they were solicited. They had to fill out a questionnaire before even arriving.
Right. So I don't think that kind of logic doesn't really sell politically. It didn't sell for Paul Manafort when he was tried in Washington, D.C. Never said, oh, that's a heavily Democrat, blah, 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 blah. Nope. When Paul Manafort was convicted, okay, he's a criminal now. That's how people reacted to it.
People who remember Paul Manafort.
I will agree. I will agree. Let me finish. I will agree. They are trying to make lemonade. There's some degree of making lemonade out of urine out of this. I mean, there's nothing they can do.
Ew. Anyway, speaking of crimes, let's talk about Congress. They made it back. The other prediction we had is that they would make it into town by today and that they would not actually legislate. So that was another prediction that we got right this week. Mike Johnson is juggling more balls than a clown in a tennis ball factory. He managed to sign the Mayorkas impeachment articles and send them to the Senate. I believe he sent Marjorie Taylor Greene to carry them. Whatever. And he's announced that there will be 4 different foreign aid bills to address Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, and I can't remember what the fourth one is. DJ will lecture me about it in a minute. And MTG, even though she got to be the special messenger in the GOP classroom today, She and Representative Massey are saying that they're going to try and call for his removal. In fact, they're asking him to pre-resign so that there won't be a leadership gap. DJ, since I can see your head exploding about the 4 foreign aid bills, do you think any of them are going to pass? Is there any money going to the people who need it?
I genuinely have no idea what's going to happen, except that there is no way any of these bills will pass with solely Republican support. Meaning that Democrats will eventually be brought in to discuss how to get anything out of there. And at this point, with Massey saying that he'll support Moscow Marjorie's call to vacate, with Mike Gallagher resigning next week, two defections will be all that they will need. Mike Johnson is on the clock. He is running out of time. I don't know what he's going to do, but I have seen the worst happen for Ukraine over the last 6 months. So until I see differently, I'm going to assume the worst will continue to happen. What scares me the most is that I think Johnson, who really has not really had a good record on Ukraine. If you look at his voting record, it's terrible. My fear is that he is going to keep trying to go through the motions and pretend that he wants to pass Ukraine funding until this summer, when the new Russian offensive comes in and they have a breakthrough and it looks like Ukraine is going to lose. And then he's going to throw up his hands and say, well, it's too late. So much for it. Too bad. So sad. That, frankly, I think is going to be the actual outcome. It's not going to go the way people think. Kharkiv may fall. Kyiv may fall. Lviv won't fall. It's up there in the mountains in the west. It's not that easy for them. It's not going to be that easy for the Russians to get a hold of it. And you are not going to have an easy conquest, even if Ukraine runs out of artillery shells or they run out of them now. Because so long as they hold a portion of that country, there will be countries in Eastern Europe who will keep feeding them weaponry to help them protect what they have. And it will be bloody and it will be horrific, and there will be thousands, possibly tens of thousands who will die, who would not need to die if Ukraine had the weaponry they needed now to defend themselves and to liberate the eastern parts of their country. The Republicans don't want that because Donald Trump doesn't want that because Vladimir Putin doesn't want that.
I hope someone has sense, but what won't help is impeaching Alejandro Mayorkas. So that's what the House is doing.
No, they did it. They did.
Yeah, they did it. They impeached him. And now the Senate has been given the articles of impeachment. Let's lighten the mood. Let's give some predictions. What do you think Chuck Schumer will do with those pieces of paper? Greg, you've been a classroom teacher. What do you predict he would do with them?
He could put it in the round file.
And that is where the Senate can do its own performative display. If I were Chuck Schumer, I would entertain a motion to table the articles so that they don't get talked about. Have 2 or 3 days of debate and make sure that every Democrat who speaks talks about the border protections that the Republicans walked away from because Donald Trump told them to. And frankly, if it gets traction, with it should, I would actually send a couple of Democratic senators off the Senate floor when the vote happens so that it doesn't actually get tabled and the trial goes forward. And you can spend another week talking about all the border patrol policies that the Republicans walked away from because Donald Trump told them to.
I recently had a conversation with a Republican friend, and I brought up all the border protections that they walked away from and the Republican Party walked away from. Part of them that the Republican Party negotiated in good faith with and then walked away from. And they pretended like they've never heard of this. They were like, oh, what bill was this? I've never heard of this. They are now pretending like it never happened. And
Okay, yeah. So you
right.
have Democratic senators remind them that it happened, and
right.
keep reminding them.
And everything from asylum being granted only at Border Patrol stations. I mean, everything. They got everything in there. Everything that they could have wanted. They're like, no.
I have a question for DJ, and I don't know whether this will stay in the podcast or not, but this is something I've been curious about. One of the big contentious elements of the border bill that the Biden administration put forward was giving him the legal justification that if more than, I think the number was 5,000 people come into the country illegally in any given week or whatever it is, that he can shut down the border. Okay? What does that mean? He has the authority to shut down the border. Do you know, DJ? Because I don't know.
As far as I understand it, what it basically means is anybody who comes to any border crossing is automatically turned away.
Okay, so that's what I thought it meant. That's what I thought it meant.
All the normal provisions that would allow them to file for asylum, to this and the other. Nope, forget it.
So that makes no sense to me, because you're saying if 5,000 people cross the Rio Grande or whatever river it is that they cross, and all of these illegals suddenly burst in, then people that are doing it the right way are told, no, go home, which gives them the motivation to do it the wrong way too.
I don't think the illegal numbers count against the port of entry numbers. I think if more than X number of people are processed at ports of entry, he can put a pause on it to allow the administrative tasks to get unsnarled and get caught up before admitting more people. Whatever's happening with the people crossing illegally, they are still subject to whatever law enforcement operations are taking place in the non-ports of entry.
And the confusion here, Kevin, is that when people hear doing it the right way, folks who stay in their home country and go through all the various paperwork and all these other kinds of things, they are not affected by this kind of thing. What's worse is that visa overstayers, which is the largest source of trouble in terms of unauthorized immigration, they're not affected by this either. But the people who are coming in and filing for asylum are actually doing it the right way. They're doing what they're supposed to do. You come into this country, you don't have the paperwork that says you're allowed. Yes, but I'm fleeing into whatever it is in my home country. I'm filing for asylum. Okay, file for asylum. This is your court date. Here, go. And most people, actually, the overall majority, actually do show up for their court date. The problem is we are dealing with a Republican Party that doesn't want immigrants of any kind, legal, illegal, or otherwise. But more to the point, they don't actually want to solve the problem. They just want to exploit the problem.
Okay. DJ, have you and I ever disagreed on this program in the past? Because
we have several times.
Oh, we have. Oh, I thought I was DJ Junior.
No.
It's one of the things we advertise for the show, isn't it?
The debate. Yeah, this is the debate without the hate. I promise you guys, they are going to be braiding each other's hair after we finish recording.
Me first.
It's really cute.
This thing? Are you kidding me?
If you saw their hair, you would understand why this is funny.
Well, DJ made some interesting points. I fundamentally disagree on what the problem is, which I know is just a euphemism that you pulled out of the air, DJ. I think the problem is that there's four of us here. Now, Greg really hasn't weighed in on this, but at least three of us who are pretty informed about politics, who take the time to research things like this, who are advocates for the Biden administration. And the three of us can't agree on what that bill is talking about. So the idea that it was this perfect bill that the Biden administration put forth that the Republicans unfairly shot down, I think we have to be a little bit more intellectually honest and say the bill had its good points, but the bill had some rough patches as well. I think there was some validity on the right that the bill was not as clear and as hard-hitting as they would have liked it to be. Yes.
Not at all. This was literally almost everything that they wanted, and it was as hard hitting. And in fact, the Border Patrol endorsed this bill. They went on Fox and defended it. The Border Patrol Union, which is
Border
a
Patrol,
very
he's right.
Yeah, they went on.
They
Fox
endorsed
and
Trump twice.
Yes, and they said, "Look, we're a Republican group. We are almost entirely Republicans, and we've never endorsed anything the Democrats done. But this is the bill that is." And they said, "This is not a perfect bill." And the Fox host was like, "I don't think that's right." And the guy said, "This is what I do for a living. Of course, I know what I'm talking about. Everything from more detention facilities, more judges to make sure that asylum courts can go much faster. There's a backlog of asylum court cases anywhere from 3 to 5 years right now. That's unacceptable."
That was one of the points Biden made at the State of the Union, that one of the reasons that it's worth taking the gamble to make the asylum claim is that you will then get to be in America for 6 years while you're waiting for your first hearing.
Right.
And Biden made the comment that if we could speed that up to 6 months, it's no longer worth it.
Okay,
right.
But that is a lie of the bill. There is no amount. I mean, there's an amount of judges, but it's not the amount of judges that are funded in that bill that can take us from 5 or 6 or 8 years to a 6-month waiting period.
No, not.
Yeah, but you know what?
That is a
But-
fallacy that the Democrats
Hold up,
say
hold
we're
up.
going to hire more judges and we're going to take that window of 6 years down to 6 months. Never could happen. Never.
But
could happen.
it definitely won't happen if we reach the end of this Congress without passing the bill.
Hold it.
But
Because
the
we
bill-
would-
the
because-
bill is not what it's advertised to be. Listen,
But the bill
I
is
agree
more
with
of
you
what it's
guys.
advertised to be than
I
doing
agree
nothing
with you
would
guys.
be.
I think we would have been better off with the bill passed than not, because it did something. I'm saying that the bill is not what it's advertised to be, and they're selling it to Democrats under false pretenses. Because again,
They're not.
the three of us here aren't even sure what the bill does.
None of that is the point, Kevin. The point is that they can take Jim Langford, Republican of Oklahoma, talk about
I know
the
that
praise he
was
had for that
it.
bill,
I know that.
and say they walked and they didn't walk. Donald Trump didn't say it's a bad bill, stay away from it. Donald Trump actually said it's a good bill, stay away from it, because I don't want Joe Biden to fix this. I want to fix it myself.
So speaking of things that are under threat, the border, Kevin and DJ's friendship,
No, our
the future
friendship
of this
is not under
podcast,
threat.
Kevin's
The straightness
hairdo.
of my hair, whatever.
Yeah, no, it's all up in the air. Israel came under threat this weekend. Iran responded to the recent death of a top Iranian general after an Israeli bombing raid in Syria. This weekend, Iran launched dozens, maybe hundreds of drone weapons at Israel, giving sufficient notice to not just Israel, but surrounding nations for Israel to repel the attack with the help of U.S. forces. The 99% of the missiles were shot down. In the aftermath of that, Biden has strongly warned Netanyahu not to respond further, not to attack Iran directly, and said plainly that the United States will not help in any offensive attacks against Iran. And this is coming as Mike Johnson is announcing the intent, at least, to vote on an Israel aid bill. How do we think, DJ, that possible aid vote will influence Netanyahu in at least the coming days, if not longer?
I don't think what happens in Congress is necessarily going to affect what Bibi does. I do think what Biden is telling him will have some influence. I think what he will be hearing from Riyadh and Amman will have greater influence, because the Saudis and the Jordanians in particular basically stuck their necks out when they helped knock a bunch of these missiles down. They made it abundantly clear in an Israel-Iran battle, they made it clear which side they were on. And the messages they send Bibi are going to be much more important than whatever Biden sends to Bibi, because Bibi already knows what Biden's going to say. Take the win. You knocked out a bunch of Iranian bad guys, and nothing happened except a poor Israeli Arab girl got hurt. Things are cool. Everything's fine here. don't ruffle any feathers. Maybe Bibi chooses to do that. Maybe he chooses not to. But that's going to be more on what his Sunni Arab allies tell him in terms of what they think would happen if Israel took this to another level or took it to a different level. So I don't think Israel is going to attack Iran directly. I do think there may be some more shots against Iranian assets in Syria, because I think...
Because there's plausible deniability on doing that.
Yeah, it's because it's not affecting Iran directly, and Jordan and Saudi Arabia is going to go, yeah, good job. Knock out those Syrian baddies. Whether that's going to ruffle the Biden administration or not, I'm not really sure. I do think this all but ensures that the IDF will go into Rafah. I think the question is going to be: Are they going to try the rubble, don't make trouble policy, which doesn't actually work, or whether they'll try something more surgical? I don't know the answer on that one. But to get back to your question, no, I don't. I don't think the congressional vote will influence what Bibi does. I will say one other thing, though. The Iranian drones and missiles that we're all laughing about because they all got shot down by U.S., U.K., French, Jordan, and Saudi air forces and defenses. They are the exact things that Russia is using to wreak havoc on Ukraine, because Ukraine doesn't have the material to defend itself.
I think that Israel is still going to do what Israel wants to do. They have amended their military tactics already. I think that happened a while ago. You don't hear about the bombing raids anymore that we were hearing about back in November, December, and January. And I think that they're going to do something to retaliate against Iran. I don't know how they do it cleanly. If, DJ said, and I'm not saying you're wrong, DJ, but you postured that maybe they're going to hit an Iranian target in Syria. Well, that's what started this whole thing. So I don't know that that's necessarily that the Iranians are going to go, oh, that's just in Syria. We called their bluff. So I see this thing as continuing, and the cycle is not over yet.
It feels like we're on the brink of regional war, and I don't think that serves anybody's interests. Greg, do you have thoughts there?
No thoughts.
Yeah.
Not trying to stay out of it.
I wish we could all stay out of it. And what do you guys think about Iran? Are they going to hold their fire, or do you think they're going to launch another offensive?
I think they're going to launch another offensive. It may not be in the next 3 weeks.
Why do you do this to me, Kevin?
Because I'm Greg Jr.
Is this payback for every time I disagreed with my father? I mean, jeez, I'm going to call him tomorrow and apologize.
No, I could be wrong. Tell me why I'm wrong.
No, I mean, I think, look, Iran, something happened to Iran. It was bad. A general died. They felt like they had to justify something. Like, hey, we've got to do something. Let's launch a bunch of missiles. And now they realized they do not want to get into it with Israel for realsies. They do not want to get into it with America. They do not want to, even though Biden has said he wouldn't, they don't want to get into it with France or UK or Australia. They're perfectly happy just being Iran for the most part. And I think that they said, hey, we pushed back, and now they are done. As long as, and no more of their people die, as long as no more of their generals die, as long as they're going to be fine. They're not going to push this one. My thoughts.
Sure, I see it the same way, but DJ,
I know.
I'll throw to you.
The Iranian regime is the most disruptive power in the region. They're the most disruptive power that has survived over the last 45 years. They're not going to let this one lie. This was an attempt to kill a bunch of Israelis and wound them and hurt them into doing something that would lead to a conflagration. I think to the extent that there is political division within Iran between the ones who want to kill us slowly and the ones who want to kill us quickly, this barrage was a sign that the ones who want to kill us quickly are now in charge in Iran. We have to remember that Israel hit an Iranian consulate in Syria, which technically is Iranian territory. I don't know how they would respond if it's a more unofficial asset. But they retaliated against us when we took out Soleimani in 2020. And Donald Trump pretended that traumatic brain injuries were just headaches. Okay.
Well, they are
This
Hamas.
is not. This
Yeah,
is not
I
a
gotta
power that is
say-
going to sit back and relax. I just don't see that happening.
And I'm picking on you in good fun, Greg, in good fun. But I got to say, the line "Iran's just happy being Iran."
Well, right. Iran is happy being Iran, and granted,
They would
are,
like the rest of us to be a little more Iranian.
they are dicks most of the time, and Iran is happy being Iran, and they are dicks in the natural state. But as long as no one is attacking them, they are not going directly. In fact, they issued a statement. Was it 2 days ago, a day and a half ago, saying, "Look, we're done unless you guys attack us again," and they're not. And
No, but they also said, "But if you dare to attack us again, we're going to unleash weapons that you don't even know we have. It's going to be hell on earth." I'm sorry, Greg. I
Blah,
just
blah,
see it
blah.
differently.
yeah, and
Gosh, wouldn't it have been great if we had like an agreement with Iran to not develop weapons that we'd never heard of?
How would you
Yeah.
do that? Like, what kind of an administration would work out some kind of a nuclear arms
Yeah,
deal?
I don't know. Like that would be, I definitely, I can't imagine somebody would just tear one of those up if
No,
they.
if you got it, why would you tear it up? Why
Why
would you throw
tear
it
it up? That'd
away?
Terrible idea, Donald Trump.
I would remind all of you that was an agreement that would have done nothing to reduce the number of ballistic missiles that were just thrown at Israel. It would do nothing to reduce Iran's fun with Hezbollah and Hamas and Syria. Now, Donald
Yeah, but
Trump
it would have
backing out of
increased.
the
It would
agreement
have
without
increased visibility that the West had into Iran, and that could have changed the trajectory of some things. It was,
No, it wouldn't have. It didn't. It didn't change the trajectory of any of those things between 2015 and 2018. Now, Trump walking away from the agreement without our allies was politically stupid. Yes, that's true. But the agreement itself, which, by the way, would have expired by now, is not the panacea that Democrats say it is. I know why you want to beat up Trump from walking away from it. It was a stupid thing to do without our allies. But the idea that agreement itself somehow meant that Iran was going to behave itself in all geopolitical facets, nothing could be further from the truth. I'm sorry.
Well,
all right. Well,
actually-
as we are all second guessing foreign policy, I think it's time to move on to an area where we might actually be able to sound like we're smart. Into a segment we're calling Are You Smarter Than a Celebrity? Taken from apparently a new television show hosted by Travis Kelce called Are You Smarter Than a Celebrity? Greg, please fill us in on this. You're the one who put this on the rundown.
so supposedly it's an offshoot or spin-off of the classic American TV show Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader?
And
Yes.
it's gonna pit normal Americans against celebrities.
I assume so. We haven't gotten a full rundown. We haven't gotten guests.
So I
Yeah.
wanted to discuss. Let's think about if the four of us think that we might be smarter than a celebrity, and I've chosen some celebrities, and we can speculate on our personal intellectual capabilities against celebrity intellectual capabilities. And I'm going to go ahead and start with the obvious one since we are talking about Travis Kelce. Greg Matuzak, do you think you're smarter than Taylor Swift?
No, not at all. I think she's brilliant. I think she sees things like colors and sights, and she probably sees things, physics that I don't even understand, in depths. So no, I think she's just brilliant. Yeah.
Kevin, are you smarter than Taylor Swift?
I don't think I'm smarter than anybody until they say something dumb. Once they said something dumb, then I think I'm smarter than them. So I have never heard her say anything overtly dumb, so I can't say that I'm smarter than her.
All right, well, let's move to the next name on the list, Kevin. This might actually meet your qualification. Kevin, do you think you're smarter than Aaron Rodgers?
I've never heard the man speak. I've heard people characterize things that he said. So until I hear him say directly from his own mouth something stupid, I don't know whether I'm smarter than him or not.
Did you take ivermectin when you had COVID?
No, I did not.
Yeah, you're probably smarter than Aaron Rodgers then.
I think he's dumb as a board. I think he's got like on his socks. I think he's got one that says left and one that says right. And they're all usually on the wrong feet, and he's like, oh, this is a left sock. What am I supposed to do with this?
And he
Damn
puts it on his hand and he does a little puppet show.
I think Aaron Rodgers is just honestly, and he deserves to be where he is. He's with the Giants now, right, isn't he?
No, he's with the Jets.
Oh, that's even worse.
Definitely deserves to be there.
Then he definitely deserves to be there. Yeah.
DJ, I'm going to give you the next celebrity.
Okay.
Do you believe, DJ, that you are smarter than William Shatner?
I do think I'm smarter than William Shatner.
I
don't think I can. I don't think I can act as well as he can. I'm not going to say that. And under normal circumstances, I assume that different people have different skills. They put their brains to different uses, so I can't automatically assume that one person is smarter than the other. I have, however, heard William Shatner say some really dumb things about the show that made him famous.
Oh,
about how Star Trek used to not be political, and
it was about utopia.
I know I'm smarter than William Shatner because I know that Star Trek was political from watching it and knowing what the 1960s was like.
Kevin, what do you want to add?
I just want to say, no matter which celebrity you name, I'm going to say I think DJ is smarter than all of these celebrities. So that's a different game show, but I think DJ is smarter than pretty much all of them. But I do have a serious question for you guys, and we could continue this. This is a fun little segment, but I just have a question for you. Without saying the number, if you know the number, please do not reveal it. But I wonder, do any of you or all of you know your IQ?
I know it. I know roughly.
I don't think I've ever been tested, or if I have, I haven't seen results.
I know it roughly. As far as I'll go.
Yeah.
So when I was about 15 years ago, my brother and I went to our elementary school. We used the, I think it was the Freedom of Information Act or something like that, to get to look at our school records. And I saw my IQ test score, so I know mine. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was,
you should get William Shatner to do that, and you guys can compare.
Yeah. When I was 22, I was writing a paper for a graduate school about test scores, testing. This is the week for it. And I went back to my school and I said, I'd like my records. And they were like, no, we can't let you have that. And I was like, I'm pretty sure you can. It was awesome. But yeah, same thing. I saw my test scores. So I have an idea, but how much credence did I put in public school testing and things like that?
Right. So. I do want to say this. I'm not going to mention the number, and I'm not going to say which brother, but mine was higher than my brother's, and it has been a point of contention between us.
All right, well, we'll move down by celebrity list. Do you think you're smarter than Eileen Cannon?
Yes. Yes. I've heard her say dumb things.
We might be better judges than Eileen Cannon, and we'd be better at practicing law than Eileen Cannon. All right, the next one. This is courtesy of my son. This was his suggestion. Greg, we'll give this one to you.
Okay.
Are you, Greg Matuzak, smarter than J-Lo?
Well, I don't know. Let me think about that. Jenny from the Block?
Jenny from the Block. Don't be, what is it? Don't be shocked by the rocks that I got. Don't be fooled by the rocks that she got.
Because she's still Jenny from the Block. Yeah, there's that whole thing like, I got street smarts. But people who say they have street smarts just means they're dumb. That's all. That's all that is. Yeah, you're a bad test taker, and
someone that never finished college says they've got street smarts.
But let's look at J-Lo. She's been around since the 90s when she was a fly girl on In Living Color. J-Lo, like Madonna before her, Lady Gaga's a little bit the same way. They have sold us a product that we did not need. And we have bought it for decades on end. And you can't do that if you don't have some basic smarts. Now, I will put an asterisk by J-Lo because she took Ben Affleck back. And that's questionable judgment. But
it's judgment. That's not smarts. That's just.
Yeah, I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. I think she is probably smarter than me. And maybe that's low self-esteem on my part. But yeah, I'm going to say she's smarter than me. Yeah, and Ben Affleck has 2 Oscars, so that's not too bad.
So thank you all for listening again. If you enjoy what we do here, please follow us on Instagram at MPU Fan Club. Don't forget to share our podcast link on your social media feeds so your friends can discover us as well. And as always, thank you to Alan Keeney for composing and playing our theme music. And as we head into the second half of jury selection, Greg, what flavor nachos will you be eating as they try and round it all the way up to 12?
I was going to do it like a 12 spice one.
What about a 12-layer dip?
Oh, a 12-layer dip. But, I just, going back to the J-Lo thing, do you know how many different fragrances she has?
I don't.
She has Beauty. She has Live.
The Beast.
She has Promise. She has Glow. She has Still.
Might I humbly submit that for this trial, the appetizer snack of choice should not be nachos, but rather stuffed mushrooms?
That was the worst double entendre. Because I think Stormy would say, no, nothing was stuffed.